Hello, welcome back to FE8 once again. This is actually not a complete overhaul mod in terms of either unit composition, a la Oops All Archers, or gameplay, a la Auto Chess. This is rather mostly vanilla. Today's twist is that instead of Eirika, we have Neimi. Also later on, instead of Ephraim, we have Neimi. Then lastly, we have Neimi proper. Together, how painful it would be for these three Archer crybabies to save Magvel. Let's find out together. The original idea for this run was to follow in the vein of Kratos MVN and do an FE8 Solo Run. He's gradually doing solo runs of FE8 with the entirety of his cast, and kindly encouraged me to go ahead with this run idea as a video back when I thought I was just going to be doing a run using Eirika Neimi. I'll go into the reasons why we wound up with both actual Neimi and Ephraim Neimi as well when it's relevant. I edited everything about Eirika so that it was identical to Neimi save her support list. This means that she has the same 4 starting stats. Now I did alter her inventory so that there was something we could use off the bat. Normally for a solo run, I would want to only use the character I've chosen, including meaning no unequipped meat shielding from other characters. However, choosing this incredibly frail archer means that this isn't really feasible. Without extensive combat rigging, there simply aren't enough healing items in the prologue to clear it without Seth acting as a meat shield. This pattern continues in Chapter 1. If anything, it becomes more severe. There are simply too many enemies that move towards you, which is to say, more than one at a time. Namely simply has so little bulk that one hit from an enemy is most of her health. What makes this extremely unlikely even with maximum luck is that she isn't fast enough to be able to double any enemies except perhaps the soldiers. These are GBA FE soldiers, so that's really not saying much. But then she also doesn't kill them, even if she does double them. What this means is that without having Seth adjacent to her, she likely ends up getting Archer boxed and unable to escape. Having Seth next to her means that it is possible to slowly pick away at enemies rather than having the run end right there and then, unless I decide to edit her skill growth and the bow crit, so she can always crit in the early levels. We wind up getting trapped here for several minutes while I play at 2x speed. It is really bad. Seth does so much meat shielding that by the end of this, he has seen 51 rounds of combat, which I know as he has gotten 51 experience. That isn't even the end of this chapter though, because Neimi is initially only able to do 1 damage per hit to the boss of the map, Forget, with the iron bow. After getting a single point of speed at a level, she can double and do 4 damage per hit with the steel bow, albeit at mid-50s hit rates. Many steel bow misses later, we finally get him, with Neimi already at level 8 and 44 turns elapsed before being able to seize. This is a very excruciating process, and culminates in Seth and Neimi being able to hit their C support just on this first chapter proper, which is why I decided that I would allow myself to deploy support partners. Neimi needs all the help she can get. Chapter 2 also becomes a very long process, becoming the longest walk I've ever seen the boss, Bone, take towards the north. Everyone ends up huddling in the forest right by Spawn, so I make yet another concession and decide to let non-combatants help in other ways, like using healing staves or rescue dropping Neimis. This sees both Blue Ross and Garcia get killed, and Seth and Neimi hit these support. Gilliam ends up playing a very crucial role in yet another of my FE8 runs, this time as an invaluable meat shield for this effort. After Chapter 2, I remember that this armory at Ide doesn't stock any bows. This means that I become increasingly more worried about the total number of bow usages I have left before Neimi is unable to see any further rounds of combat. You may have heard of the FE Tuber Actual Lizard. Now meet Actual Neimi. With Chapter 3 comes the arrival of our second unit. Someone on the Actual Lizard's Discord server suggested to me that I use Actual Neimi as well, since I obviously had not edited her to not be Neimi. The reasoning was that it would make the run a bit more varied than it would be as a solo run. I agreed, and thus the solo run idea was ditched entirely. As an instant C support partner, Colm becomes Actual Neimi's designated support fielded unit. Fortunately, due to the far more enclosed space, aka the magic of walls, this chapter overall ends up being far easier and doesn't require me to make any sacrifices. This is still done very slowly and still with Seth as a meat shield at times. Unfortunately, walls leave us again in Chapter 4, which is unfortunately also a route map like Chapter 2 was. Given Neimi's horrific defense, this once again requires very judicious usage of other units in order to rescue the now 2 Neimis, and also to box enemies in where needed. Like Chapter 3, this map sees everyone huddling up in yet another strange location, this time being on the small island with a village that you can visit to recruit loot, due to the reinforcements that appear from behind. Here, Eirika, Neimi, and Seth hit their A support, which as a fire animal support gives Neimi 3 attack, 1 defense, and 15 avoid relevant stats, making her both hit harder and dodgier. These will both be greatly appreciated. In Chapter 5, due to the weapon usage worries, I edit Natasha's inventory so that she gives me 2 more iron bows, since I decided against making the iron bow an infinite durability weapon. This was a bad idea. I make Vanessa collect the dragon shield for me, because God knows that the 15% defense growth Archer is going to need some bulk. Seth and Gilliam also reprise their roles as lures for enemies. In fact, Neimi's low defense is so appealing that despite having the opportunity to attack Gilliam, he would not be able to counter due to having no weapons on his person. An Archer decides to attack actual Neimi instead, who can obviously counter. This attempt results in a reset because Seth gets killed due to being surrounded and not having weapon triangle advantage against axe fighters since he's unequipped. After 59 turns of support building, I'm not having him go quite that easily. On the second attempt, I don't get Seth surrounded, and it goes much better, albeit also still slowly. I discover as well that I was right in my assessment that Natasha needs to bring some iron bows in her inventory, as there was no realistic way that the 2 Neimis were going to be able to get to the armory while also being around for meaningful combat, not least because I still wanted the Dragon Shield village and also the other villages. Getting all of these villages means that we get the guiding ring after the map, which I'll be able to use on all the Neimis because I edited the files in FE Builder so that I'll be able to promote female archers with any promotion item, rather than having to wait on the Master Seal from Chapter 15 and the Lord promotion items after 16. Immediately following Chapter 5, we have Chapter 5X, where we get Ephraim Neimi. Turning him into Neimi as well was something that I thought would be funny, and it was, for a second. After said second, I came to regret this decision, when I realised that this meant that according to the rule set, they were going to have to do all the meaningful damage exchanging combat on this map by themselves. In my editing, I accidentally left them with the ability to use lances. Once I realised this, I then intentionally decided to keep this on them, as a means of distinguishing Ephraim Neimi from the other 2 Neimis already in existence. This may also have been a mistake, as I quickly learned that due to Neimi's measly 6 con, this means she gets dulled by quite a lot of enemies while holding onto a lance of any description. Both attempts 1 and 2 see Neimi die, both after her using absolutely all of the healing items on the map, including the elixir from the chest room. In the third attempt that actually sticks, I use both the calves and Orson as meat shield in a far more aggressive manner than I did previously. At spawn, this requires all 3 of them, and later on, mostly just Orson. Since Orson obviously has far better bulk than F Neimi, this requires far fewer healing items so we don't run out of HP. Since Neimi has no 1 range and the boss has no 2 range, the boss becomes a fairly classic range abuse moment. By the end of this boss abuse, F Neimi is level 13. Due to me allowing myself to field support partners and units as long as they don't do any significant damage in combat, this means that I'm thankfully able to see through a good chunk of the fog in Chapter 6, due to Colm using the torch from the melee village in Chapter 5. With careful positioning of everyone, including my healers, this ultimately makes the map a very manageable, if very slow, slog, expedited by having Seth rescue drop Eirika Neimi into position to enemy phase kill the boss. Now that the overleveled Neimis have developed enough speed to dissolve most enemy types, this means that this is fairly representative of how the run will look, until they're able to promote and have access to swords for a 1-range combat option from Ranger. As I think is fairly obvious from how I said very slow, we did not save all the green units and thus did not get the Orion's Mold. This is the main reason why I set all promotion items to work on female archers. The idea of toting around an unpromoted Neimi throughout the entire game sounded aggressively unfun to me. In Chapter 7, Colm once again benefits the run by being able to steal the energy ring off the Thunder Mage for +2 strength from one of the Neimis, which is greatly appreciated. It also sees Eirika Neimi hit level 20. At this point she has 29 HP, 11 strength, 12 skill, 18 speed, 14 luck, 6 defense and 8 res. Compared to Neimi's 20 averages, this puts her slightly below average in nearly every single stat. The point of speed difference doesn't matter anyway because she's already doubling anything. As a result, at the start of the next map, I decided to promote her, promoting her into a ranger. Similarly to Ephraim, I didn't remove the Eirika lock from her, so she is able to use the Rapier now, which is very nice. This weapon means that she's able to handle all the knights in the Angelic Robe chest room by herself now, without needing the protection of her knight. The Rapier and its XPs are very useful. When Ephraim Neimi arrives, I'm extremely glad that I decided to leave the Ephraim lock on her, because otherwise I don't think that she would really stand any chance without the Regan Leaf. After the cavalry reinforcements and other reinforcements on the left-hand side are dealt with, Ephraim Neimi goes around the long way to improve herself. By feeding as much experience as possible to her, I'm able to get her to level 19 and then promote her, which I do because I'm very curious about how the auto-leveling process will work with an already promoted lord going into the route split. Ephraim Neimi is doing better than Eirika Neimi, with 15 strength and 1 more point of speed before promoting at 1 level lower. And of course, she has lance access and therefore the ability to use 1-2 range in the form of the javelin. So the Ephraim favoritism, engage aside, continues yet again. Watching the Neimi cutscenes is very funny to me, partly because I didn't change any of the dialogue in the main game script, because as of the time of doing the playthrough and the time of commentary recording I didn't know how to. For some reason though, it gives us flashback Eirika and Ephraim as themselves, while also keeping Eirika Neimi as a ranger in the brief map cutscene. Fascinating. At the route split, I decided to go on Eirika's route. This is primarily because even though I'm not looking forward to having to do some of the route maps on A route, I really do not trust that the two Neimis can clear Phantom Ship by themselves in a semi-reliable fashion. Speaking of Eirika route maps I really don't enjoy, it's time for Distant Blade! Speaking honestly though, it's kind of fine, if very boring, when you do it in a setting like this, where you automatically consign yourself to saving neither village. Despite me saying it's boring, we do arrive in time to recruit Amelia for her Speedwing, before she retreats. Then I have her immediately store it in the convoy for her death on the upcoming enemy phase. Actual Neimi gets to promote into a ranger as well, and I decide that the distinguishing factor between the three Neimis will be that Eirika Neimi will have S swords, Ephraim Neimi will have S lances, and Actual Neimi will have S bows. My friend Danny Doyle later pointed out that I should have made Actual Neimi a sniper for the content, but, well, this is the reality we live in. I apologise. At the point of promotion, Actual Neimi's strength was higher than Eirika Neimi's, so does this mean Eirika worse than Neimi confirmed? No. To be honest, at this point, nothing exciting really happens for a few chapters now that they're both promoted. For the most part, they just both run around with swords equipped and kill things at one range, occasionally switching to a bow to kill things if needed. Eventually, I get so bored that come chapter 13, I decide that I'm no longer going to let myself deploy Seth and Colm as support partners for Eirika Neimi and Actual Neimi. Things pick back up again in chapter 15, where I discover that if you've already promoted the alternate routes lord prior to the route split, they also level in the promoted class. This is exactly the result that I was hoping for when I promoted her prior to the route split, and means that I now have level 10 Ranger Ephraim Neimi, which is very nice. Things also pick back up again because we have a death and thus reset. The first attempt of Scorched Sand ends when Actual Neimi dies by getting hit by 2 Kellic Tomahawk hits with 33 displayed hit chance. Since 33 displayed hit is actually 22.11 true hit, there was around a 5% chance of this happening. In my second attempt, my poor inventory management prior to the route split comes to bite me. Ephraim Neimi has basically no weapon uses at their disposal, and thus gets archboxed in for a good while before the other Neimis are able to come to the rescue. Eventually, after routing the rest of the map, we have another self-talking moment between Eirika and Ephraim Neimis. Shortly thereafter, they hit their C support, which is very surreal. This gives me an idea of something that I decide to implement after the end of this map. Said idea does require me to bring along Seth and Thor to chapter 16. This was not for them to provide support bonuses. If anything, it was for them to anti-provide support bonuses, because I need them to be gone, in order for Eirika and Ephraim Neimis to be able to get to their A support, due to the support limit in GBA. For Ephraim Neimi, I could have gotten rid of Kyle instead, since I also made him a support partner across the course of chapters 5x and 8, but Since the Neimis all have very high speed and luck, and therefore avoid, the map itself is fine. At the end though, I do save state and then attempt the Lord promotion to the end, which predictably bug out for the funnies. Chapter 17 is also similarly not a challenge in terms of the enemies when we fight them. Keywords are when we fight them. The Riverfolk green units are completely and utterly obliterated by wyverns. It's quite something. Cyrene is also similarly destroyed within the next minute of my gameplay footage. At the very least, at the end of the map, we get both the Nidhogg and the Vidofnir, 2 legendary weapons that we will be able to use. So, that's nice. What's not nice is that the egg map continues to be my worst nightmare. At the very least though, compared to the auto chess run, I have 50% more units I'm able to control, meaning that I can kill the eggs faster. The twin Neimi stick together, while Actual Neimi handles most of the eastern side by herself. Due to all the reinforcements, at the end they all regroup and head towards the bottom right. During this process, the twin Neimis hit their B support, which is part of what I edited after my realization in chapter 15. I present it in full for your enjoyment. I find this very funny, to the point where it almost makes the egg map not torture. Almost. Chapter 19 is the same as the usual cheese strat. Lord rescues Pontifex Mansell and sits on the throne for the duration of the map, but this time with a slight twist. Ephraim Neimi is adjacent to Eirika Neimi for the continued support building. This support building pays off in Chapter 20, where they unlock their A support, which continues to be hilarious to me. So I shall shut up momentarily so you can enjoy it. The map itself is fine, albeit slow because 1. I can't warp anyone, and 2. Unlike the auto chess run, I don't have infinite use of legendary weapons at my disposal. I've given Actual Neimi the boots by this point, in addition to a body ring, so she just kinda charges ahead on her own for a good chunk of time, especially since I hadn't unlocked the A support by the start of the map. Eventually though, we do break through, and I have Actual Neimi Nidhogg down Morva before having Eirika Neimi seize, bringing us to the finale. For the finale, I'm disappointed to learn that all of the Neimis remain so frail that they nearly get one-shot by Magvel. As if to be an indictment of this entire run, which it is. Still, eventually I get through it, only for the first attempt to then end. This is not because either of the Lord Neimis die, or even that Actual Neimi dies, but rather because Formalties has forced animations, and I hadn't yet added in the Ranger Lance animations for Ephraim Neimi. This meant that the game crashed, and I had to do the whole thing over again, which took me several in-real-life weeks to get back around to doing. The second attempt goes much the same in every way. In the process of quote-unquote fixing the Lance animation issue, I end up inadvertently setting the bow animation also to the Lance animation, giving several strange moments where the various Neimis just huck massive arrows at the enemies. I fixed this for the second part of the finale, which despite a somewhat unfortunate miss from Eirika Neimi, still ends in a one-turn thanks to an Ephraim Neimi crit due to the double fire support. And of course, we have to finish off the Demon King with Actual Neimi wielding the Nidhogg. So that's the me, myself, and I Neimi run. The early game was very painful to go through, as Neimi's bases just make her extremely ineffectual, even at the combat she can do for several levels. How long it takes to actually buy additional bows certainly doesn't help, meaning that combined with the base stat issue, I think it's ultimately very reasonable to have edited in additional bows for the Neimis to use. In the mid-game, the run became far more bearable after both Eirika Neimi and Actual Neimi were promoted. Access to 1 range, while obviously less good than access to 1-2 range, as Ephraim Neimi would return access to, is still just better for killing things in enemy phase than exclusively being locked to 2-3 range. Then the late game, once Ephraim Neimi returned, is probably where I say I had the most fun with the run. I found the cutscenes and events with 2 Neimis very funny, to the point where I eventually went and edited the support scenes between the 2 of them. And there's the end card, which I also edited. Overall though, I'd say if anything, this run cemented into my mind just how bad Neimi is as a unit, even when you have 3 of them. Most of the enjoyment I derived from the run came from said cutscene humour, and just playing a lot of it on voice call with other people, rather than the actual gameplay itself. If you were to do a solo run in FE8 and wanted to have actual fun, I would definitely not recommend her as the unit of choice. So when Kratos does eventually get around to her, I'll be very interested to find out how much of his experience aligns with mine, not least because he will only have 1 Neimi. Even beyond the solo run context though, I also generally wouldn't recommend her as a unit either. Thank you for watching the video, I hope that you enjoyed it. Making compilation videos is a lot of effort, so if you enjoyed the video and you haven't already, I would very much appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I very much appreciate everyone who's already done so. Regardless, thanks again for watching, I hope to see you again next time. Until then, have a good one.